Hello, good morning and welcome. Wow, this is very echoey. Thank you for joining us here for best practices to modernizing your frontline workforce. Very excited, we've got some great speakers here for an interesting panel. Now, during our time together, we'll dive a bit deeper into frontline workers, discuss the frameworks that we see being successful, kind of what the learning have been, and how to address some of these complex problems that we see with frontline workers who really are at the heart of many, many businesses. Just on the logistics, we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. So you'll see some microphones dotted around the room. So please ask your questions at the end. And of course, the session, just like all the other sessions, is being recorded and will be made available on demand. So once you've seen just how fantastic and exciting the session is, please share with your colleagues so they can also see and learn from the session. So I myself, I'm Frank Weigel. I'm a GM here at Google. And I'm very excited to have with me Macarena Hernández and Alan Miller. And so why don't you go and introduce yourself a little bit, Macarena?
Of course. Well, hello. I'm Macarena. I'm from Mexico. I'm the CTO of Akron. Akron is an energy company in Mexico. And we have more than 5 business units along the oil and gas value chain. And we have operations in Mexico and the States, and also presence in more than 10 Latin American countries. And we have around 800 employees, and 40% of them are frontline workers.
Wow. And what is your role at Akron?
Well, my role is the CTO of Akron, but my job is to generate innovation and intelligence through the use of technology.
Awesome, that's a great job, and we'll hear later just some of the amazing results that Macarena has driven through that role. It's been really exciting. Alan?
Yeah, absolutely. Alan Miller, I'm a business development leader with 66 Degrees. We're one of the sponsors here at Next. I also have a background as a Workspace deployment engineer. 66 Degrees, we're a Google-focused services partner. We provide collaboration and productivity enablement for customers in North America primarily, although we have an international engineering presence. We work with about 1,000 Workspace clients specifically, and those are across a broad spectrum of industries as well as size, so Fortune 100 to founder-led startups. Industry-wise, I think relevant to today's discussion, we do have a concentration of customers that are in healthcare, financial services, and manufacturing.
Excellent. And we chatted earlier, and you explained to me like where the name 66 Degrees come from. It's very fascinating. So yes. Would you mind just telling the audience?
Yes. So I'll preface in Fahrenheit.
Yes.
66 degrees is the temperature range in which clouds can form in nature, and that's from negative to positive. So that's the 66 degrees.
Excellent. I love it. That's one of the most clever company names I think I've heard in a while. So before we jump kind of into the core discussion about what both of you have done and how you have helped a frontline worker transform digitally, I just want to take a couple of moments and actually talk about what are the problems that frontline workers typically have to endure often. And so we're seeing that there is a weird disconnect because for many, many businesses, frontline workers is literally the primary way how customers are interacting with the business, right? As a result, frontline workers are incredibly important to the perception of a company. At the same time, we see that a lot of them are very disenfranchised. We see a lot of turnover typically, which presents, of course, big challenges when it comes to training, for example. There is a lack of inclusion often of like how they're connected to the system and lack of access to certain technology. And so as a result, we have this kind of this chasm, this gap, where frontline workers on one hand side are incredibly crucial and important for the experience of customers, yet there is a lot of gaps in the technology they have access to and the experience that they have. And I think today we'll hear a lot about what approaches both 66 Degrees as well as Akron have taken in order to overcome those challenges and see just how effective that has been. So with that said, why don't we kind of dive in and start with, for Akron, Macarena, what is your frontline workers? What type of frontline workforce do you have?
Yes, well, I think it will be very helpful to have a little bit of context. So Akron, it's a very traditional company in a very traditional industry and in a very traditional country. So like tech is not everywhere like here, so and in this type of manufacturing facilities is really rare. And the people working there, they are not used to like to use technology, not even in the work or not in their houses. So yeah, like we have a lot of frontline workers, from drivers to cleaning people, but like the main groups are two. The first one is the people that is working in the manufacturing facilities. And they are not allowed to use tech tools during their work because they are need to be concentrated in the production line.
It's a safety
line.
thing,
So
right?
yeah, for us it's why they will need some tech tool, But yeah, now I'm going to tell about it because they were disconnected from everything, like communication, and yeah, they feel excluded. And the other group are their sales reps. So it's people selling our products that are lubricants, additives, oil, door to door to auto shops, gas stations, and any small industry that use these kind of products for their engines. Yeah, so they were always in the street with a cell phone from the company, but with, these emails with different domain from the corporate ones, so they also feel excluded. And they also need to wait to go back to the office in order to check their emails or the information. They don't have real-time tools in their cell phones. So these are our two main groups in Akron.
And what was the kind of business process? I think you mentioned to me if a seller in the field needed to get a discount, how did that work?
Well, they used to go with the client, and the client asked for the discount, so they go back to the office with their boss, and they sign the paper and then deliver the product. And well, they developed this process through Gmail, where the boss could approve the discount while they are in the field. So it has it reduced the cycle time of the sale by 50%, all of this, and it was a small change.
Yes. Now it's I think for me this is always one of the very fascinating things, and I think we'll hear this from Alan as well. Just how common paper processes still are. Many of us here in this room, might think, oh, paper process, that's really not happening anymore, but it's incredible. It's literally the physical paper processes. We hear a lot in manufacturing facilities and things, right, where a clipboard is still being used, all the way to what personally I always consider the digital paper process, which is, you still have the piece of paper, it's just an email now, but it's not really part of a digitalized process that can be monitored and optimized. Instead, it's just people sending email, and if somebody forgets that they needed to respond to approve, and things just fall through, just like they did with a piece of paper. Let's see. So both of you are tasked with very complex problems. We just talked about some of these, and frontline workers often have this very broad range of responsibility. So you're both trying to solve for technology needs, but there's more beyond that as well. And you see large variety, of course, both of roles, as we heard, as well as, lots of people are very different and have different amounts of exposure to technology and so on. When you work through complex problems such as this, what are you looking for in technology? And so I think, Alan, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, many of the pain points that Macarena just described are things we hear from our clients with a heavy frontline workforce. If I generalize a few of those themes that we most frequently hear, it's a desire to enhance communication between departments, increase visibility to data, wanting to automate or digitize a usually a paper process, or improving user experience. And that's not just the internal users, but also the end customer experience as well. An example that comes to mind for me around a paper-based process is we had a healthcare customer who wanted to digitize essentially their intake process. Everything they did was oriented around a pen and paper. And then at the end of the day, somebody is putting that into a database that, of course, is not mobile friendly, right? So we, in conjunction with Google Workspace, we also introduced an app sheet as part of the technology solution to that problem. Now, AppSheet specifically allowed us to introduce role-based access controls, automated monthly reports, and have a mobile application that's not tied to a desktop. The user experience, or the solution created an experience that was not just a good user experience for the intake specialist, but it was also reducing the check-in time as folks would come into the office. So ultimately, it's improving that customer experience as well.
That's a great example. By the way, those who aren't familiar, AppSheet is Google's low-code, no-code tool. So it's a way for people who are not technical but know the process to easily build apps. And actually, I think you see here on the screen, you see, I guess, those were some of the apps that you've built for your customers?
Yes, it was. And to your point, I mean, AppSheet is great for fostering a culture of citizen development, and it doesn't require the knowledge to write a single line of code, right? It hooks up natively to a lot of different data sources, whether that's Google Sheets, Excel, MySQL, Salesforce data, or it has its own database. And I think more abstract thing I see a lot of value in AppSheet as a product is that it really accelerates the time to value against a traditional application development lifecycle. So you're not focused on frameworks or languages, you're focused on the business concept. And that business concept, who knows that business concept better than the people who are in the line of business, right? Exactly. A lot of times that might necessarily not be core IT, although they can support it. So that's it, and I think AppSheet too. There was an exciting announcement a few weeks ago that it was actually rolled into most of the Workspace.
That's right. We just announced that it will be a part of all the paid Workspace queues. So from that side, an easy way for everybody to kind of try it out and get experience. Excellent. And AppSheet was the same thing. I think you used as well for some of the solutions. Do you remember that right?
Yeah. We use it, but I think like before talking about the tools, I think it's very important, like for us, to find a simple technology was key because all our strategy, it's about the people. So humans are complex, and also the cultural transformation is very complex. So we were looking into very simple tools that allow us to do all this transition easier, because it has been very challenging. But so we decided to go from not tech tools at all for this group of people to this simple one. It wasn't easy because my technological team was a very traditional one, and they were very used to work with other tools that for me were very complex. So I said, like, imagine if no one has used anything, and then you put something very complex, so it will be a nightmare. So we decided to choose Google Workspace because of the simplicity of that and all the connection that their tools have. So we provide the tools to the people, and also the team was convinced after 1 month of trial, because they tried to convince me before to and I say, come on, this is very complex. There are good tools, but they are very complex, and we need something very simple to generate this change. So my team was convinced, and then one of the leader of the manufacturing facilities worked with the people in the production floor, and they developed all the quality process. They transition from paper to AppSheet. So they have reduced, I think it's 25,000 paper sheets per month and 10 hours less per month doing this process by hand. So it's working in one product line, and we want to expand to other product lines. But I think for us it's key that it needs to be simple, because everything else is very complex.
Yes. I think that's, especially with frontline workers, simplicity because of high turnover and other things, and really being able, as you said, being able to actually have the experts, the people who do the process, who often aren't necessarily very technical, being part of creating the apps, I think is something that we've had a lot of success with, because ultimately the people who do a process are the ones who know best what to change about it to make it more effective and more efficient. Yep. So we talked about some of the main problems that you have been trying and actually solving, not just trying to solve. Let's pivot to discuss the solutions a little bit more and around what you've learned and what the frameworks and best practices are that you've kind of found. So, Macarena, let's kind of continue with you. How were you able to now, so you had decided on the tool, you started to have the solution, but as you talked, there's the people, and changing people's behavior is not an easy thing at all, right? So how were you able to get that mass adoption at Akron? And as you went and switched to Google Workspace and started rolling this out together with AppSheet?
Yeah, well, I think the technical part was the easy one. And then we designed a campaign that it's called Digital Inclusion. Mm-hmm. And we realized that in order to generate digital skills, it needs to be in person. So we visit all our facilities in person to talk about this change, mm-hmm. and also to reinforce our support with the people and answer any question and be there, mm-hmm. and make sure that they were using the tools, because they were feeling very excluded, and this was a statement to go there and help them and show the tools to become digital, mm-hmm. but to connect with them. So we want to bring them closer to the company headquarters, yeah. through these tools, but we need to be there in person. So this one, we call this Google Day. So we visit every place, and we want to do it again. And also, for all this cultural transformation, we have been talking about the success stories that we have. So we invite a champion that has been using the tools very good, and to present these cases in front of everyone. That's awesome. And they explain how to do it. Mm-hmm. And also we have another initiative that it's called, did you know that in Google, and we present some feature.
Cool.
And add to this feature a video to helping people learn how to use it.
Oh, that's such a great approach. What was the reaction, for both? Did you notice any difference between the sellers, right, and the manufacturing workers? What was their general response to all of this?
Yeah, I think that it was. They were very surprised when they see us there in their facilities. And also they were really excited to participate in these activities. And we had a previous program that was only for the administrative people, that is called Ideas Lab. And we expand this program to the factories, and now they are the ones that are participating more in these kind of ideas, to change processes. So, and also the sales reps are very participating in this kind of tool. So it has been incredible.
That's great to see that kind of empowerment that just comes from being able to participate in ways that previously wasn't really possible. So digital transformation, I think, one of the finest examples of how we can do that. Now, Alan, clearly, you as an SI, you don't have frontline workers so much yourself, so you work with a broad range of companies. What guidance do you have for those organizations, kind of as you engage, as they want to modernize their frontline workforce? How much does it compare to what Akron does, and what are some things that you are doing?
Yeah, so I think we can draw off a lot of what Macarena said here, and that there's really two components we see in projects, and that's the people and the tech. And both of those, and merging those successfully, is really going to be the key to an overall successful project. on the partner front, we want to be able to consult on the tools and tactics that are going to support the company as they move through and create things like Google Days and do trainings and make sure they're enabling the team. But that executive support, the executive champion is absolutely critical. Like when I hear say like her mandate is driving change and innovation, that's really important. It's music to our ears to hear that, because we're not going to have the pulse on an insight into the culture as a third party that they're going to have internally. So those two things are really important. I think as far as a framework goes, we follow what's called an ADKAR model. And that is awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. I believe it's also a framework that Google leverages as well. So we found that to be very successful. To click into a couple of those, the second one, desire. I think that's a really important piece on the journey to be able to help the frontline workforce understand why the modernization is happening, get them excited about it. This is going to help you do your job more effectively. You're going to reduce some of the time you're spending doing manual tasks and ultimately serve the customers better, right? And that message is really important. And then at the end, I think the R, the reinforcement. It is really important to have positive reinforcement, especially within the champion network that you create. So you want it what you have rolled out to sustain. And I think the positive reinforcement and celebration of that processor is really important. Throughout that framework, a couple of commonalities that are weaved throughout is a clear vision and strategy, and that ties back to the executive team that is driving that clear vision strategy down. This is how it ties to our operating plan. Here are the benefits of this modernization. Early employee involvement, effective communication, and then creating that champion network. So you want to have folks that are not just part of the technical team, but the business users that are supporting their colleagues throughout the modernization effort.
So you're saying those champions are basically part of that frontline. They're frontline workers themselves who
Yes.
kind of get extra excited and maybe have
Yes.
done some of the apps that are being deployed so that it kind of comes from within that community itself.
Yep, absolutely, and I think in hearing some of the activities that they put forth. I mean, we've seen a customer do. They actually hosted a concert internally, and then announced they were modernizing and going Google at the concert.
Wow.
The digital assets that you have, throughout some of the key locations in office or in certain facilities that are giving people the timeline communication, what to expect, just constantly educating on what to expect. Those things are all very important.
Awesome. Now, when it comes to I think we talked a little bit about what the concrete things, and I now was curious to see what about the success, right? So we talked about how you've rolled out digital transformation. What were some of the outcomes, right? After all, right, for a lot of businesses in the end, we start at the beginning, we have certain problems, right, where frontline workers often go and have a much higher churn rate, where they aren't as engaged, where they aren't as effective. So what were some outcomes that came out of the transformation that you've driven?
Yeah, well, from the beginning, we knew that transitioning to Google will give us more collaboration and simplicity. So we think that we were becoming more effective. Mm-hmm. So we start measuring savings. And for example, the quality process that I told you, like we saved a lot of time mm-hmm. and paper, mm-hmm. and we can convert that to money. Mm-hmm. But then with the sales reps, we decide to go further and check if what were happening now. Mm. And we realized that from the day that we transitioned to Google today, the sales has increased 25%.
Wow.
But also the turnover has decreased 40%.
Wow.
And I think sometimes it's very difficult to relate these business metrics mm-hmm. directly with the adoption of a technological tool, but I don't think that it's only a coincidence.
Yes. Well, especially I think the way you describe just how the life of a seller becomes a lot less frustrating and more effective, now being able to get the approval through Gmail and so on, I can totally see how that must have been a big part of it. That's excellent.
Yeah. And also, before we gave these people a different email from the corporate one, and it was they weren't identified with us mm-hmm. Because they have a high turnover. So for us, it's why are us like spending money in these people if they are like going back and forth? But it was because of that, you know? So like the problem was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, like they are still, like the turnover is decreasing, so it is very good. And also we realized that like the frontline license is not the best one for them. We need to give them a better one because they are the ones using all the time their mobile phone and they need that information in their hands. So yeah, that was like, we learned that yeah, they need a better one because they are the ones using this information in the streets. And you can think that one in the computer, it's going to use more features, but that is not true. Like the people selling in the street is the one like are really using the tools. So yeah, they are becoming more than a frontline license.
Yeah. And I think earlier you called it digital inclusion, and it seems like really that kind of approach has driven a lot of not just outcome, but just like a sense of belonging and more empowerment, which is really, really great to see. So very exciting. Alan, what about for 66 degrees, like any results that you've seen at your clients that you can share?
I think what was just highlighted in something that's quantifiable and tangible outcomes that you're measuring, so cost savings, productivity, efficiency, employee engagement, absolutely. And then I think one that I would add to that is sustainability. When you're implementing or you're modernizing technology or implementing something new, what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years when your business needs change or technology evolves? Have you laid a foundation that you are able to continue to evolve with it, right? So I think otherwise the metrics that was shared, those are perfect.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I mean, with digital transformation comes the ability to be more agile, and the world is changing very fast. So I think that inherent ability to then evolve processes much faster than traditional, I think is a key thing. And it's there. Do you have any approach to try and measure or quantify that agility? Or is it still something that's business to business different?
I think that's business to business and how to quantify the agility there.
Okay, yes. Cool. So we're almost at the Q&A. I just wanted to ask both of you, having been successful at driving that digital transformation with Frontline Worker, kind of what is a piece of advice that you would like to give to everybody in the audience or everybody who's seen this recording later? What would your advice be for them as they're trying to modernize their frontline workforce?
Well, I think that giving voice to your people will surprise you. Everyone is capable to create new ideas, innovate. They only need tools and guidance. So I think like they are waiting for an opportunity. And if we as leaders give them these tools and guidance, they are going to make magic with them. So awesome. That is my advice.
Sage advice, thank you. Alan?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more with that. I think it's important to give your people a voice and give them the right tools to succeed. One thing that I was thinking about is since the last time we were all here a few years ago, there are some new terms that have emerged, right? Terms I hadn't heard before, like the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, overemployment. And I think while traditionally you would tie those to knowledge workers, I think what it's done is pull back the covers on really the upstream and downstream effects of employees being disenfranchised. And so giving them a voice, giving them a voice in the process, being able to enhance their own workflows using tools like AppSheet, I think it have a positive impact, not just internally, but ultimately on the customers that they're serving.
Awesome. Excellent. That was sage advice. Really great to have you on here.